Hello and welcome back to my channel. My name is David Novak. Today I'm going to do the Shakespeare Journey Tag, which was created by Kelly at Books I'm Not Reading, Jason at Old Blues Chapter and Verse, and Nicole at A Day of Small Things. I hope that Kelly and Jason are improving from their recent bout. And let me say no more about that. Longtime viewers of my channel may be aware that I did this tag a year ago. For Shakespeare, I have been a booktuber for more than a year, apparently, but I was tagged by James at Q&C, and I will put a link to his version of the tag video in the description box. I decided, because I have the honor of having been tagged, I would do it again. And I'm sure in some cases I will just repeat myself, but in other cases I've decided to change up my answers. I don't remember exactly how last year's version went, but I am sure that I said as my favorite play, Macbeth. I'm going to change that up. I'm going to take a slightly different tack and look at Shakespeare a little bit more from the standpoint of a writer. And in fact, I was going to look for something from my book of sonnets, and I don't know what it was. I was, please don't do that. Please don't do that. Well, if this flips over, you will know what happened. Dear me. Oh, okay. I think I found what I wanted. Well, I'm not finding the one that I wanted. There's a poem in here where I use the line something about his sonnets teaching me the trade, let's say, because I learned how to write poetry in part thanks to the ready example of what Shakespeare hath left us. I'll read something from here which is not what I was looking for. There must be more than one that pertains to Shakespeare. You didn't expect this. You thought we were going to talk about Shakespeare, and instead we're talking about me. So this is Sonnet 13. Shakespeare, forgive the wrong I do thy lyric, in echoing thy verses in my lines. My crude attempts enough to give an earache to thee long buried, vulgar anodynes. How can thy influence on me diminish, when thy own sonnets taught to me my trade? Though till my days of versifying finish, I cannot hope a something as well made. Vulgar attempts of piecemeal sloppiness my verses are, the lot not unified, reflective of my life. I but digress from that high standard thou hast dignified. Such is my lot. but let it be confessed, if mine are not so good, they are my best. Apparently that was the line I was looking for, and somehow I didn't see it. He is due for a claw clipping, so none of this activity is harmless, but I will try to keep my winces to myself. So that was when one writes a book of sonnets, I suppose it is only fair to, and now I can't think of the phrase, there's something about giving props, I don't know, paying one's due to one's making an acknowledgement, that's the word. Now, oddly enough, my first book, which was just a compilation of poems, has a sonnet to Shakespeare, which I've never thought was all that good, but it came out of a writing group that we had. A few of us from Paul Carroll's poetry writing workshop at University of Illinois, Chicago Circle campus. We banded together, actually it was more than one class of his, we banded together and formed our own little writing group. And this was one of the things I brought to a session, and I am not particularly smitten, but of course I'm not smitten with any of my poems, but people did seem to like this one. So this is very, very early. A sonnet to Will Shakespeare, who didn't write in a descriptive sonnetly mode of his love's beauty, her conquering light, her hair so radiant so that it glowed, who didn't write how much he loved, nor proved he loved, nor wrote how much he wrote how much he wrote how much he loved, but that he loved, his inclination was such, who didn't write with words nor poetic devices, but with land masses of thought, which shifted and moved, now prophetic, now revealing, not unchanging and caught. A thankful sonnet to him, whose kisses are softer than a buttercup. This is. My friend Richard in the group, Richard Huddle, said, it's about time somebody just went and said thank you to Bill Shakespeare. At any rate, it's going to get more personal yet. What was your first experience reading Shakespeare, and what was it like? We may well have had him in a class. I don't recall that, but back in the day, people had typewriters, and my father felt that knowing how to type was a good skill. These were big, clunky machines, and I'm talking before even electric typewriters. And so some skill, some manual dexterity, some strength was necessary to be able to do it. And I know people would take classes. I think there was Greg, G-R-E-G-G, was a popular venue for studying it. And I knew that my father had taught himself how to type. And so I thought, well, I can do that too. And so I did. I made a little mock-up of which finger was supposed to go to which key. And then I just proceeded to type. And I didn't have any particular material handy, so I picked out Shakespeare's play Othello, and I started at the top, and by the time I got through the entire play, I knew how to type. I think I discarded that, but it could possibly be amongst my papers somewhere. I think I've only seen that one once, a long time ago, up at Stratford in Canada. 2. Has the reading of a Shakespeare play ever brought you to tears? What scene was it, and where were you when it happened? No, it has not. I'm sure any Shakespeare play that I've seen has had me well up a little bit. But as far as reading them, no. Are there any people that have played a significant role in your Shakespeare journey? I don't know what I said last time, but probably my friend Marcia, who was a member of this poetry group and a classmate in the Paul Carroll class that I talked about, did. She was fond of Shakespeare. She's the one who got me to read James Joyce's Ulysses. But she didn't tell me to do it. I just wanted to make my paces keep step with hers, so to speak. But I remember there was a Shakespeare sonnet in the Western Wind anthology, which our class used, written and edited by John Frederick Nims. And I remember her talking to me about the sonnet, and she said, now I don't remember which sonnet it was, and I don't remember the words, but I remember she said to me, that is just the most amazing description of disgust. I don't know what it was, something like that. And I thought about that, and I had read it and thought, oh, this was a marvelous description of revulsion or contempt or something different. And that was my first little wedge insight into the fact that each of us, when we read poetry, bring our own selves into the verse. So that was my first inclination, that the words on the page did not particularly hold either of those things, but they were open to every reader imposing his own meaning upon them. No, don't sit on my questions. Okay, now you can sit. Number 4, do you have a favorite book or film about Shakespeare? I absolutely do. This I know was in the last one, Introducing Shakespeare by G.B. Harrison. This goes through everything about Shakespeare, what you can know about his theater, what you can know about his life. His will is printed. Contemporary mentions of him, people who saw his plays, what they wrote in their journals about it. There's not a lot of this material extant, and it's possible that more has come since this was published. So this was first published in 39, reprinted in 71. It talks about Shakespeare's brother and how he people wanting to find out more about Shakespeare would talk to his brother a little bit, if indeed that was his brother. But there is really not a lot about Shakespeare known, and I think he makes a pretty good case for the idea that a person named William Shakespeare wrote the plays and not some earl and not some queen, that sort of thing. From my standpoint, it doesn't matter. They say have a room full of monkeys, and eventually they will type out all of Shakespeare's plays. Well, Shakespeare was that monkey, I think. It doesn't matter who it was. They were written. We know that. And it's a moot point, as well as saying who was Homer or the men that wrote the Homeric epics. It falls in line with biography and other trivia like that. I know I'm being harsh. So, number 5, which character in Shakespeare most resembles you, and in what ways? I don't see the people in Shakespeare's plays as characters. I mean, for a joke, I might say Polonius. I like Polonius. But as I did with Shakespeare's sonnets, I also used Shakespeare's plays to learn about playwriting. And this is where another poem of mine comes in. I had quit my job as a photocopy clerk for a big downtown law firm. The closest I had come to a permanent job, in that I worked there for 11 months, which was a rarity for me. I never worked any place longer than 6 months. And I decided that I was going to just take time off and figure out how to write a play. You know, I'm thinking about this collapse of NaNoWriMo, which has happened. NaNoWriMo was an event where every November people would all sort of at the same time get down and set themselves a goal of writing X number of words per day, whereby at the end they would have a completed novel, or at least a first draft of a completed novel. And that is a mistaken idea towards writing when it comes to something like drama and when it comes to something like poetry. I know nothing about writing a novel, so I cannot speak for that. But for drama, as with poetry, probably the most important thing is to figure out what you're doing. Even more so for drama. For poetry, you can still... Now see, he has to go and sit on the questions over here. Now, come on, dude. I mean, there he is. This has to do it. Sorry, losing my train of thought again. Oh yeah, you can pop out a poem without really knowing what you're doing, but it's probably pretty unlikely that you will write a play without knowing what you're doing. And there is this fancy prevalent that all one needs to do is knock out those whatever number of words. I don't even know what the word count would be for a play. And then revise and revise and revise. And none of that will make up for not knowing what you're doing. So I took that time off from work. I don't know how long I was off, but I lived at a time when my rent was $285 a month. And so it was not a pressing concern for me. At a time when average rents were much higher than that. And so I pulled out Shakespeare, whatever copies I had, and began reading them all simultaneously. And so that reading experience was very different. And when you do a crunch with Shakespeare and you read all of his plays all at one time, you begin to see them differently. The linear illusion evaporates, so to speak, and you you see down to the structure. And the play that most clearly revealed it to me was The Two Gentlemen of Verona. Sometimes you can see better in a work that is more flawed, something that is more perfect, such as a King Lear. You will not be able at any point to see behind the illusion. But in The Two Gentlemen of Verona, I did. And I wrote a poem to just sort of clarify in my own mind what I had learned, and I titled it Ballad of the Reprobates. Now, I would like to, it's a poem that came up with sort of a musical aspect to it, and I don't know if I can sing it to you. In order to do this, I have to be reading it in reverse, which is kind of hard. Well, Ballad of the Reprobates, I'll do it. A sought-for image constantly disturbs my mind, but 'tis not she. Fair Sylvia, I worship thee, to thee bequeath eternity. This love has been a fleur-de-lis of fraudulent fecundity. May Cupid's wrath fall gingerly. A shifting image shamefully my heart perplexes, who is she? Fair Julia that mastered me, to whom I gave my chastity. A dandelion is love to me, of withering vitality. May Cupid's wrath fall gingerly. So that was me setting out the bare bones of the dramatic structure that I used subsequently for my plays. Since I am in a singing mode, I did another poem around the same time that also required some singing. So here it is, Specious Milonga, and I will just do it without showing you the words because it's not in the dialogue structure. Mirror, mirror on the wall, who's the fairest of them all? Coquetry invokes the mirror, who of all, who of all? Beauty is a point of view, fairest of them all is you. Flattery becomes the hearer, you. Tell me, talisman, how to keep my gentleman. Sophistry was never dearer, keep that man, keep that man. Gone is he that liked you best, gagged by words that proved a jest. Calumny was never clearer, all a jest, all a jest. And then I would go off on that. The only recording, I suppose, of that, I still remember the tune from all those years ago. I might have done one of those on the channel before. It's possible. I probably did Specious Milonga. So that has nothing to do with Shakespeare. Which play would you most like to see performed in a theater and why? I think I've seen most of them. And I generally have left Shakespeare behind. As I say, my relationship to him is very different. It was more of a working relationship, let's say. If there's some really good production that comes around, I would have no objections. What is it that Bartleby says? I don't mind or something. You know, yeah, I'll go to see one, but it's really not critical for me at this point. Number 7, what actor throughout history would you most like to have seen play Hamlet while in his prime? In this case, I will say her prime, and I will say Sarah Bernhardt. There exists on YouTube a little clip of her in her role as Hamlet. I would like to have seen that. I probably mentioned in my last video that the best version of Hamlet that I can recall seeing happened here in Chicago on Clark Street. There was a small storefront theater company called Footsteps Theater, and it was an all-female company. And that was a place where I really got to see what an all single-gendered cast can do. It was just a marvelous production, and nothing I've seen has matched up to that as far as Hamlets go. In a way, having the text performed by players of a single gender strips away a lot of the nonsense, of the superfluous nonsense, and it really cuts closer to the bone. But that, of course, is why the ancients performed their plays in masks. I saw actually at Stratford as well, they did a version of Oedipus Rex, the William Butler Yeats version, and it was a remounting of their original mounting of it, which had the performers in mask. I think in the original masks, actually, which had been in the warehouse for 50 years or something like that. It's a wholly different theater-going experience. Do any of Shakespeare's plays intimidate you? If yes, what play and why? And I would say no. Number 10, what tips would you give to intimidated readers coming to Shakespeare for the first time? And again, I would say the same thing that I'm sure I said last time, which is just see them. I mean, I would say if you feel too much intimidation, then just don't bother with it if you don't want. There's nothing that says you must read or see Shakespeare, but my advice last time was to see Shakespeare rather than read it. The first Shakespeare that I saw, actually, and it's only been in my later years that I've had the chance to see everything professionally mounted here in Chicago. It's very easy to see things in Chicago. We're pretty unique as far as cities in that regard. But the very first thing I saw was at King Richard's Fair or something, where people would dress up pretending they were I don't know, medieval persons or something. And there was a small troupe that did, it may well have been As You Like It. I'm not sure. It was one of the comedies. And it was just done. It wasn't on a stage. It was just done there. And we all stood around. And I'm sure the acting was not impeccable. I'm sure the play was cut down and so forth. But it revealed to me the power of the words on the page in a way that the words on the page themselves might not do. So that is what I would suggest. So you probably would be best going to that type of a performance as opposed to the kind of thing where the director has decided that the play takes place in 1830 Naples or whatever, you know, and then everybody's all dressed up in the uniforms and they have the briefcases and stuff. I mean, that is more likely to be a distraction than not. So that is taking my advice from last year and possibly improving upon it a little bit. Which is your favorite Shakespeare play and why? For the sake of this, I was going to say The Two Gentlemen of Verona. Secretly, it's Macbeth because it's real short and quick. Unfortunately, in my own playwriting, I was never able to attain that short and quick quality that I liked so much. And so if you go to attend one of mine, you're going to be, and the guy next to you is going to be, you know, so that's how that goes. And then I skipped over a question, which was number 8, to deliver a favorite speech or soliloquy from a Shakespeare play. And I did that last time. So I just decided to pick something out at random from this book. The Pelican Shakespeare in the first series was actually my preferred, and I have lost most of those, and to try to reclaim them now would be too difficult. So this is just a scene that the book happened to fall open to from Romeo and Juliet. So this this follows a scene between Romeo, Benvolio, and Mercutio, and I won't go into what they were talking about, but so the first line refers to that. They exit, and Romeo is left. He jests at scars that never felt a wound. But soft, what light through yonder window breaks? It is the east, and Juliet is the sun. Arise, fair sun, and kill the envious moon, who is already sick and pale with grief, that thou her maid art far more fair than she. Be not her maid, since she is envious. Her vestal livery is but sick and green, and none but fools do wear it. Cast it off. It is my lady. Oh, it is my love. Oh, that she knew she were. She speaks, yet she says nothing. What of that? Her eye discourses. I will answer it. I am too bold. 'Tis not to me she speaks. Two of the fairest stars in all the heaven, having some business, do entreat her eyes to twinkle in their spheres till they return. What if her eyes were there, they in her head? The brightness of her cheek would shame those stars as daylight doth a lamp. Her eyes in heaven would through the airy region stream so bright that birds would sing and think it were not night. Something of a well-known scene, that. Thank you, James, for tagging me, and thank you. The final prompt is to tag other booktubers. I think most people have done this, and I don't want to intimidate anybody by tagging them. This is my second time around, but I invite anybody else to do this tag if so moved. I will put the prompts or the questions into the description box also. Thank you very much for stopping by my channel.